we are going to swing at a different direction now. I am so honored to have this next guest on. Our guest for the next couple hours is John B. Wells. John's an actor, musician, writer, investigative journalist, composer, martial artist, aviator, and broadcaster. He finds the ancient sage advice of concentrating on just one thing to be true, his one thing, the arts. He's internationally renowned voiceover artist with credits ranging from serving as the announcer for CBS, The Late Show with Craig Kilborn, to voicing promos for hit television shows like Discovery Channel's Deadliest Catch and Gold Rush. And he's lent his voice to popular films like Oliver Stone's JFK and Talk Radio, and so many more. If you tune here on Sunday nights in Salt Lake, if you tune into Channel 2, CBS, Unsealed, Alien Files is on every Sunday night around 11 o'clock. You will hear John's voice there. But where you're going to know him more from is he performed weekend duties as the top-rated host of the nationally syndicated overnight show Coast to Coast AM. After frequently serving as a guest host in January of 2012, John became the Saturday evening host of the most listened to overnight program in history and held that seat until January of this year. You can now hear and watch and listen to John Wells' Caravan to Midnight shows 24/7, anytime, all day, and become a CTM program member. He educates, captivates, and entertains his audience, and he's just an all-around nice guy. I've listened to him for many years, and I continue to listen to him at www.caravantomidnight.com. Without any further delay, let's get him on the line. John, good evening. Welcome to K-Talk and AM 630.
Well, hello, Pat. It's good to be with you. How are you doing?
I am doing good, and it is great to hear you back on terrestrial radio for at least a couple hours right now.
Appreciate that. You know what? Thanks very much for that very kind intro of yours. You know, I don't remember how many years, but I think 2 or 3 years, perhaps, maybe a little longer. I don't know. Time's going by so fast now. I think I better be a journalist. I got to write down what I did, earlier in the week just to remember what it was. But
right.
I was the image voice guy for KSL Television Channel 5 out of Salt Lake.
You were. Your voice is heard everywhere. And I remember, because I'm a native Chicagoan, hearing you on WBBM in Chicago as well.
Yep, WBBM News Radio 78,
yes.
You betcha.
Yes. So your voice is, without a doubt, well-known, but I think where you're most well-known for is your run over at Coast to Coast, and that's where I started listening to you faithfully for a long time.
Oh, man, that's great. That's the thing about it, is that I wasn't known at all. And then when with the job at Coast to Coast, then I became known. And I remember I was at a grocery store, and this big guy with a beard and long hair said, by the way, I gave him the card so he could read the digit off the back. I was buying some groceries. Good grief, you sure leave the grocery store these days with not too much in your sack for $100. Isn't that the truth? But anyway, I digress. He says, by the way, I know the mothership. And I went, oh, well, you're pretty special, Anyway, that was kind of fun. But, before that, I wasn't really known at all. People would sometimes look like, have I heard your voice before? But that'd be about it. But then when you put the name with it, now that can be fun, and it can also be problematic on occasion, depending on who's finding out what your name is.
So how did you get into doing what you do, John, into the voiceover work and radio? I mean, how did it, obviously you were at Coast to Coast for a couple of years, but how did you get into this? Is this something you wanted to do years and years ago?
That's a really good question. I've been a fan. So most of these things that I've done in my life, whether it was like pop up here and there in a little movie or whatever else, or do some music or whatever, I was a fan first, which kind of stands to reason in a way. It's like, hey, I like this. And then if I were to just say that I was actually led to do this, it would be the most accurate thing that I could say, because I'm not about to sit here and tell you and your audience that, I planned the whole thing, because I didn't. Actually, I wanted to be an actor. Mm-hmm. I can't really tell you why now, but But because as I thought about it, and this man who's one of my relatives, this big guy named Orson Welles, once said, "Well, actors aren't really anything, are they?" And when I heard that, I went, Orson's got a point there. They're playing the roles of other people. But I still did it because it was fun. It was great theater department at TCU. It was just generally fun to be in the student acting gang all together back in those days for reasons you can probably determine on your own. But meaning that there were lots of available actresses.
Right.
There wasn't much dating between the actors and the actresses. So anyway, it was great fun. It really was to be a wild idiot back in those days, like I was, although well-read and on my way to becoming well-educated. But actually, my dear departed mother asked me to record a spot for her, and I did. And I said, "Okay, Mom, whatever." She goes, "Well, would you write the copy and everything? Here's some notes." I went, "Sure." So I did it, and this guy handed it over to a fellow named Ted Jones, who looked like this. He looked to me like he should play the role of an Australian gun runner. He had long red hair, and he listened to this. Of course, the guy, when he first gave it, I had the script there, and he left me alone in the room with a Studer reel-to-reel, and just said, "Just get it at 59, we'll be good. There's the counter right there." And he kind of rolled his eyes when he left. When he came back, he had a look on his face that I didn't interpret at first, but looking back on it now, it was like, "I'm so sorry I rolled my eyes at you when I left you in the room with the recorder." One thing led to another, and we did the spot, and Ted came in, the program director, and said, "You could probably do this for a living if you felt like it." I went, "Okay, well, thanks." He goes, "Here, take this tape with you." He mixed on some music on this little spot, and I played it for a buddy of mine who had quit high school about, I don't know, at the end of his junior year. I never figured out why he did that, but he went immediately to broadcasting school, and we were still friends, of course. I saw him all the time, and I said, "Listen, you'll get a kick out of this." And so he said, "Why don't you let me have this for a couple of days?" I went, "What?" And he said, "Yeah, I want to play it for Mick." Well, the Mick that he played it for is known these days as Capitol Hill correspondent Jim Nikolashevsky, who was quite big in Dallas-Fort Worth on radio stations like K-Box and all these great stations back in the 60s when I was really a child. It wasn't really hep to the scene. In fact, I was still using 50s expressions like that one. And then after that, a guy called from TM Productions while I was at this. Anyway, they hired me at this little mom-and-pop radio station. While I was there, a guy called from TM, said, "Would you drive over to Dallas and do this demo?" So I did. And then they got me to do some automated voiceovers. And then was the aha moment when this gal named Gail, she had taken a job as one of the engineers there at the little mom-and-pop station, Fort Worth. And she said, "Listen, Ken Rundle has a part-time opening at the Zoo," which was this fabled rock station. I said, "Yes." And she goes, "I'll make you a deal. You let me use your production room so that I can make a demo, and I will pay you back by having just informed you of that job opportunity." I said, "Fair enough, sweetheart, knock yourself out." Well, she finished at 3 in the morning, so I started my demo at 3 in the morning. I finished it at 9 in the morning, then drove to Dallas. Of course, I was supposed to be to work at the station where we produced our demos at 10 o'clock, and so they were looking sideways at me when I came in late. But 2 weeks later, they hired me. And I worked at 3 months part-time, and then a fellow named Tom Owens came in, and he just thought, "Oh, no, this is the weekend guy," because now they were getting me to do Saturday nights and the staff meeting, or actually Saturday mornings. It's Friday night, 2 a.m. to 7 a.m., which was kind of a rough shift, but whatever. So 3 months of that, they put me on 10 to 2 at night. 6 months of that, they put me in the afternoon drive, and by the grace of the Lord, and I mean it too, I pulled the highest rating that had ever been pulled, 18 to 49 men in that time slot. It was a 23.8 share.
Wow.
Yeah, and the nearest one was at 13. Now, you would think that this would be helpful, but I found out that it was not helpful at all, politically or anything else. All it really did was make some people mad, make other people jealous, and scare other people to death. So I stayed there just about 2 months shy of 3 years, and then went full-time into voiceovers and just got to do all these wonderful projects. And then I went to see that friend of mine who had been the program director at the Zoo, and it turned out he was at Premiere. And I said, "Man, time's going by, and I'm sitting in the studio. I don't even need an engineer or a secretary now. We got email, and you just record your stuff and send it down the iPipe, and it shows up 2 seconds later in somebody's studio." I said, "This is just, I mean, it's a living, and it's a pretty good living, but I don't want, this is all that I did professionally on my headstone here. He goes, if I were you, I'd think about doing some talk radio. And I went, well, I'd love to. I got a big mouth. We know that. And he goes, yeah. So one thing led to another, and then I talked to a fellow who went to Tribune shortly after he hooked me up with Coast to Coast. And I did one show in '05, and then I didn't do another one until, '06 and '07 went by, and most of '08. And then I did one. I got to speak with Ray Bradbury, of all people, visionary author, and what a guy. Ray Bradbury. He was just a joy. In October, I believe, of 2008. It's either October or June. And then nothing happened in '09. And then in 10, they started calling me. And I did a few shows. And then in 11, Coast to Coast called me some more. I did a bunch of shows in 11. And at the end of 2011, we learned that Ian Punnett had been blasting his headphones just a little bit too long, and he was, and still is, suffering with a severe case of tinnitus, and he had to relinquish his post there. So they said, would you like to take this? And I said, let me think about it for a second. Okay, I'll do it. And that was it. It was a dream come true, because I'd been a fan of the show for so many years, listened to Bell in the middle of the night, and then George Norrie, whom I liked quite a lot for the first probably 5 years he was on the program. I really liked him a lot. I thought he was a great, guy to take over for Art.
It's
and then Zoo Syndrome took over. It was like, that got just a little bit too big for his britches over there, so they gave him the jettison from the mothership, and here we are doing Caravan to Midnight, which has been amazing.
Well,
so anyway, I'll shut up now. You can talk. It's your show.
No, not at all. No, not at all, John. It show's about you. It's that's the problem with so many of these talk show hosts is they just talk too much. And we're here to hear about you and educate people about you. But we got a lot of questions in, and of course Dave sent me a bunch of little talking points to kind of hit on. But the big question that I got from so many of my listeners is, and people say, well, Coast to Coast to the competition. Yeah, it is in some sense of the word, but for what we're doing, for what I do, I love doing what I'm doing. I would love to take this somewhere else someday, but I found that times have changed, as you know. There's not a whole heck of a lot of money in AM radio. There's a few chosen people that do make the money. But you got to love doing what you do, and I do, and that's why I'm here all the time doing what I do. But what happened over at Coast to Coast? I got tons of emails. Ask John, why did he leave? What happened? Was there a fight? Why did you? What was it big corporate politics that you had enough, or they had enough of you, or just that's the
well, anytime. It's kind of you ask that question, and I'll answer it as truthfully as I can, because I think there were a variety of things that contributed to that. It never helps when. I don't think it's helpful to speak your mind within the parameters that there are certain parameters there.
Sure.
And but sometimes I just can't resist busting the system. Just kind of test it a little bit, see what kind of tensile strength it has. And eventually, I had to have a conversation that went something like this: if you don't want me to speak President Obama's name, because frankly, I am looking for a bright spot here, but I don't find one. If you don't want me to speak his name, kindly stop booking guests who speak his name, because I'm not going to tell them to change their thinking. I've always said, listen, this is your forum to do what you want. Mm-hmm. Now, barring any of the obvious, like, if you say anything ugly, even we'll bleep you out. So knock yourself out. If you want to come on the program and make a genius of yourself, this is your forum. If you want to come on the program and make a dumpski of yourself, this is your forum also, and I'm not going to stand in your way. Now, if somebody's a little nervous or something like that, it's like, hey, just relax. I'm just a guy just like you. We're just going to talk. It's just you and me talking with a few million of our closest friends, and that's it. Forget about it. And we had a great time. But when you bring people on who are going, Obama did this and Obama did that, I'm not going to tell them to shut up or stop speaking their mind. That's the problem with the media as it is.
Right.
So I think it was that, and plus people responded to it really well, and it was could you make your music more mainstream? Oh, yeah, absolutely, I'll do that. And then, of course, I wouldn't. And people quite enjoyed that music, so you know, I just didn't really follow the rules, and because I thought they were limiting the program.
Right.
And, of course, it's not my show, but the man who was ops manager there said to me, he said, listen, you know, just I'll keep things cool. Just Saturday nights can be a little different, no big deal. Well, they let him go, too. And he'd been with Premiere for a long time. Yeah. But that's just the way the game is. There are some people, I suspect that it was probably some pressure outside of Premiere. Mm-hmm. And I'm not mad at Clear Channel especially. I mean, I try to be fair and square about this. They were a very good client for a long time. Back when I was doing a lot of radio stations, liners, and so forth, you know, like contributing to the demise of Western civilization. You know, we thought we were joking, but actually it turns out it was true, which is, I sort of regret that. But you know, these payments for these little monthly payments for doing these liners would come in from all these different media corporations and companies and so forth. And I noticed as time went by that they all began coming from the same company, and that would be Clear Channel. And we did a lot of stuff that I thought was not only, I mean, it was okay to be tasteless because it was all in fun, but some of it got to be just downright raunchy. And there were a lot of times when I said, listen, I can't read this. Mm-hmm. You know, well, why not? Well, because there's some 12, 13, 14-year-old boy or girl that might take it seriously.
Right, right.
I mean, you remember all that stuff about serving in the public interest of public trustee? We can be naughty as you want, but I don't think we should be nasty. Right. There's no call for that. Oh, no, you just got to do it. And I thought, you know, this is interesting that you would let Howard Stern go because he was too raunchy, and you're writing stuff that's every bit as raunchy as he was doing, and worse in some cases with far less taste even, if you can imagine that. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think Howard Stern is probably a genius-level intelligence. He's a great marketer, a great interviewer, a lot of things. I didn't think it was necessary for him to do the shock jock thing, but I got to tell you, Pat, I'm not some lily white guy either. I mean, I know all the words, and my use of them, people will tell you, you know, if you run into them, has been monumental in some ways. But I think it's one thing to be sort of a young, rough fellow, as I like to still fancy myself to be, mm-hmm. You know, in your private life. But it's quite another thing. I think your professional presentation should be professional. You're being paid for this. That's really all professional means. An amateur does things for the love of the work. And when you become good enough, then they'll pay you for it, and you become professional, which means that you honed your art. That's what amateur and professional are supposed to mean. Right. So I just thought, you know, some of this stuff is not going to go well with with some of the other clients you may have who are advertising products or, you know, whatever it is, cars or soap or whatever. They may not. These spots may run on the same channel in the same cities that this raunchy stuff is going over. I can't do it. So gradually, you know, they were like, fine, we like your voice work. We're not going to insist that you do this nasty stuff, and that was okay. But then, you know, I couldn't help but notice that a lot of people in the radio business get treated really, really roughly. I mean, they have no qualms about firing some program director who has 3 kids and his wife's about to have a baby, and it's 2 days before Christmas, and they give them the word. I mean, it's real cold-blooded in some ways.
Mm-hmm. It is.
You have to be prepared to operate in that environment without becoming cold-blooded yourself. Just let your yes be yes and your no be no, and that's it.
Exactly.
So that's kind of what happened, and you know, rightly or wrongly, or for better or worse, I've been allowed a life for one thing, and to be able to be an individual. I'm not really sure that we're just becoming an absolute Patrick McGowan and his Prisoner series fanatic, to where I practically had every episode memorized. It was all about the right of the individual to be individual, and so rugged individualism kicked in, and, you know, there's a price to pay for that, but there's also a price to pay for being part of the herd.
Exactly.
And I'd rather pay the price for being the maverick than Pay the price for being a steer. You eat steers.
That's true. You want to take a call?
Absolutely.
All right. Caller, welcome to K-Talk. You're on with John B. Wells.
Oh, my gosh, guys. I'm from Vegas. No, I'm from Utah, but I'm calling from Vegas. I hate you guys all the time. I just barely came on. I don't even know what you're speaking of. What's your conversation about? May I ask?
Oh, it was all about me.
Oh, God. Okay, right. No, it was just about me. No, what's up? What are y'all talking about?
Well, we've got John B. Wells on. You know who John is?
No, dude. No, who? I'm a Shakespeare. Who the hell is John B. Wells?
I used to be on Coast to Coast AM, little lady. I
Really?
used to do the Saturday night
who are
over
you?
there with George
Who
Norrie
are
and the
you?
boys, and now, well, that was then and this is now, so I'm talking with Pat and you. So what's going on in your world?
Nice. This is nice. Listen, I'm from Utah. I'm like a 16-year-old kid, got married, wasn't pregnant, had children. They're now millionaires, and I write for Oprah magazine, and I'm a paralegal, and I just got Social Security finally in my life, and it's like I'm just sitting back enjoying the day. Yeah.
Excellent.
I love to just I love to just dial you guys' number, and it's almost obvious that all of a sudden I'm just listening. I'm thinking, can I get involved? Can I say hello? And it's like, dang it, tell me who you are. What do you do?
Well, I do a little radio sometimes, and then other times I do what I like to call a cybercast, which means I blow my program out all over the world over the internet. And every once in a while, somebody nice like Pat Daniels will call me and ask me to come on the program, and I get to talk to people like you.
Very well. I'm so honored. I am so honored.
It goes both ways.
Listen, I was escaping somebody the other day. I don't know if you know Vegas. This guy was like all over me the other day, and he had tats from head to bottom. And it's like all of a sudden I realized he's pinching on me. And I'm like, okay, find the girls' room and run out. What did I do? I ran out straight into a taxi cab.
In Las Vegas.
Goodness. You don't mean you ran into it. You actually got in the cab. You didn't run into it.
No. I went under it, and he swerved, and I went down. I almost lost my teeth.
Oh, Lord, are you all right?
Yes, it was about 6 days ago, but I was so bummed. I was scared to death to get back in another cab, and I knew I was too screwed up to even get on a bus. So I'm like, I checked myself into a hotel. And I called
the best thing that can happen to a person is to be forced to look death in the eye and then survive it. And then after that, you're not afraid of anything anymore. So forget about it.
Oh, tell me. Listen, I would tell you lots of stories. I don't know. I used to be a drunk. I remember I used to be an alcoholic, and I used to drive. But the Lord saved me. I never involved another person, another car, anything. I wrecked 17 cars in World 6, and I never spent prison time. And it's like, oh, my God, Lord. And like 7 years ago, I said, I will never get behind the wheel of a car because you saved me and everybody that crossed my path. And I thank
That's really sweet. You know, it's said that the Lord looks after old people, children, drunks, and fools.
No, we should. I guess I'm almost all of them.
Yeah. Well, don't worry about it. That goes for a lot of us. We're all bozos on this bus.
No doubt.
Well, hey, listen in, and we're going to be talking about a lot of fun stuff here.
Oh, I'll be back on listen, okay?
Right,
I don't know when to speak in, and I got all kinds of fun things to speak of. You know, lately I've been talking to Chris Cannon and a bunch of senators there in town. I'm a paralegal, and I've got this big story going with Oprah right now that's going to go blast. It's
if you talk to any politicians, tell them Wells says you're being paid to do a job. Get up there and do it, or get out. Okay?
Yeah, no doubt. What's your first name?
John.
John Wells.
Yep.
My name is Tracy Marie White Dalton Butterfield Triplet Soto.
Excellent. Nice to meet you.
I go by Tracy Triplet, but on Facebook you look me up, Tracy, Traci, Dalton, Dalton. That's me. Check me up and talk to me, okay?
We will.
I appreciate the conversation.
Good night.
I'll listen up, guys.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye. All right.
Don't tell me her crew was the Dalton gang.
I don't know. You want to take another one?
Sure.
Sure. Good evening. Welcome to K-Talk. You're on with John B. Wells.
Hey, Pat, it's Bill in New York again. Hey, John, how are you?
Doing too good for my own good. How are you doing?
Very good. John, first I want to make a comment quick, then a question. I think what you're doing is an absolute service to the community and society today, because we need more people like you who aren't afraid of the retribution of or the retaliation of corporates and the control and the manipulation. I think that we need more people like you on the air.
Well, that's very kind of you. Thank you for that.
Quick question.
I got tired of listening to their gas for a while, so I thought I'd give them some back.
I hear you. Is there any source of reliable news that a person can watch today or listen to that isn't totally controlled by the corporate interests?
Yeah, but you have to look for it. And the problem is now that mainstream media is kind of moving off the main sequence as the stars in the heavens do eventually. That means that this is the rise of alternative media, and we're going to have to watch each other, just like a good police department recognizes that their job is even harder than they think it is. They have to police each other, and they have to, I've said this a lot, but I'll say it again, almost the same way every time, but they have to be prepared to be that Serpico that's willing to let somebody take a pop at them because they know the department's dirty and they got to clean it up. And that's to a lesser degree, and maybe even an equal degree, I don't know, but I'm willing to take low on this one. We have to do that to each other, and when we find that people are not, who are in the alternative media, I guess that's what we call it now, the underground news media, we have to be careful that they're on the level. We just have to, because that may be part of the plan, is to, well, let's pervert and twist and challenge the credibility of the alternative media. Then there won't be any difference between mainstream and alternative media, and then we'll be able to do what we want with them. They can already manipulate pretty much whatever they want.
I also think there's a lot of political motivation involved with that, too. Definitely.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But, yeah, the reliable channels would be ones that you just have to seek out. I like to think that certainly Pat is on the level, and I'd like to think that my program, Caravan to Midnight, which you can get at caravantomidnight.com if you want. There's stuff on YouTube, too, so people can check it out for free. It's a subscription service, and we have to do it just because there's no other way to do it. And unless it's going to be a basement out of my
your
aunt's
program, there's no restrictions, right? Obviously. You don't have to
there's no
deal with
restrictions
any of
at
that
all.
political nonsense.
Mm-mm. Not a bit, but I got to tell you, we have had technical difficulties that not only I, but guys in the IT profession have not experienced personally before. That they've only heard of them. I mean, everything, we'd have entire segments. This only happened once. We had an entire 2-hour segment just disappear from not one, but 2 hard drives.
Wow.
And I thought, okay, well, when something like that happens, that's deliberate, okay? There are all kinds of anomalies that can occur, but when something like that happens, you're getting a message. So, message received, and guess what? We're not going to change anything, so here we are. You know where we are, obviously.
John, have you ever thought about eventually maybe doing something syndicated on television or cable or Netflix or whatever? And do you think that if you were to do something like that, would you be able to have full control, speak the truth without having the restraints or censorship from the network itself?
No, I think there's going to be censorship if you go to anybody's network that's run by any of the 6 media companies that control everything.
Wow.
So the only way to do it is do it on your own. Yeah. If you can make it on your own, then okay. If you can't, well, we'll find out. But in the meantime, do everything. My motto is do all you can as well as you can for as long as you can. But, you know, unless we let go of control of the Internet, which, by the way, I never thought it was a good idea to run everything over the Internet, but too late now. If we relinquish control of that, then your censorship will come from, you know, some taxpayer-funded center somewhere. You won't even have to worry about the individual corporate powers doing it. The government will do it. They're already doing it in Mexico all the time. And check out this website called worldmeat.us. And there's an article on there about how Mexico manipulates Facebook and Twitter, picks people up, beats them senseless and bloody, the police do, and then dump them back off at their houses. people have no idea how bad it can get because this country is so soft. I mean, it's just, I grew up in an era where it was good to be strong and it was good to be an individual. It was good to understand there was going to be adversity to overcome. And, but if you kept going and you were good at what you did, you'll make it. You'll be all right. Be good at it. Then the money will come. But now we chase the money first. And my dad told me one time, be careful about chasing money because if you haul enough, to the dump ground, you can be a zillionaire. And I said, yeah, I get your drift, Dad. So I added, but you might not want your name on the side of the truck. So,
John, you know what? With everything that's going on today, especially after 9/11, with all this national security stuff going on and the control, it seems like it's almost something put in motion so that people have this fear of standing up and talking and taking that alternative route to talk about things that were challenging in our minds, like conspiracy type of subject matter. Even something as simple like the MH370 that crashed, just to ask questions. It seems like we can't even ask these questions no more without some type of retaliation or attack or coming into your privacy and seeing what's going on. I mean, it's really a serious issue what's going on today.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's all about fear and keeping it rolling. And it's just one thing after another. The economy's falling apart. Oh, look, Russia's getting mad. Oh, the Bear H bombers have come real close to our coastline. They're rattling their sabers. Oh, it's ISIS now. Oh, the border's being flooded. Oh, it's Ebola. Oh, that's the whole idea. As a matter of fact, people are so scared in general. I don't know if this is emblematic of the entire society, but he must have been knighted by now. Is his name James Dyson? He makes the Dyson vacuum cleaners. I got one of his little vacuum cleaners. It's this orange thing, and it's got a pistol grip on it. And, it looks like some kiddy's ray gun out of the 1950s. And I was on an elevator the other day taking this thing down to my car. They wanted, I thought, kind of a lot for it. So I thought I'd just vacuum the car continuously, and that way I could say, hey, I got the money back in 6 months, What did you do? I vacuumed my car 5 times more than normal. But I was carrying this thing, and this woman just looked at me and it in fear, and she said, what is that? Well, it's battery powered, so I just turned it on. And I pointed at her, and I pulled the trigger on it. It started sucking at her, and I said, it's a vacuum cleaner, lady. Do you need to go back to your suite? But
John,
that's the thing. People are just scared to death.
John, an absolute pleasure to have the opportunity to speak with you tonight. And I definitely will check out Carabine to Midnight and see what's going on with your site over there.
That'd be great. Glad to have you.
Have a great night, John.
Thanks for calling.
Take care, Bill.
Thank you, Pat. Have a good night.
Oh, you're welcome, my friend. Take care.
Bye-bye.
You're right, John. America is everybody's scared. Everyone's afraid to do anything. It's a state of fear. I mean, that's all it is. It just rolls from one thing to the next. What do you think of this? What do you think of this Ebola virus?
I think quite a number of things about it, brother. And one of them is the whole thing looks just as funny to me now as Benghazi did the day that it happened. Mm-hmm. I think it's interesting that it was a Belgian guy, a doctor named Piot, P-I-O-T, who discovered this thing and, in fact, named the virus. They didn't want to name it after the village or whatever that it was discovered in because that would forever put a stigma on it, like that would be a big deal in the middle of nowhere. But anyway, they decided to name it after the nearest river to the village. Mm-hmm. And it turns out it was the second nearest river to the village because the map was inaccurate. And so the name comes from the Ebola River. Well, this man, unless I'm entirely incorrect, he discovered this virus in 1996. But now all of a sudden, it's just popping up everywhere. Sierra Leone, Liberia, a little bit in Nigeria. Oh, look, a Spanish nurse got some. Oh, look, this one. And now this man, poor deceased Mr. Duncan, mm-hmm. shows up in Big D, which I certainly hope isn't renamed to Big E. They take his temperature. He's got 103. He tells them that he's been traveling to and from Liberia is the story now. Now they're making it sound like he's not actually from Liberia, just traveled to and from it. So they just give him a handful of antibiotics. He's got 103-degree temperature, and that's a little curious. But now, self-aggrandizing swine boys like the Reverend Jesse Jackson have decided that what they need to do is make it sound like the reason that the man died is because of the color of his skin. And I would submit to you that as long as black people have so-called leaders like Sharpton and Jackson, and people in Congress like Rangel, I mean, why do we think that they have been allowed to spew the divisive stuff that they have continued to spew? Martin Luther King was trying to bring people together. These dudes are trying to divide everybody, and they're doing a pretty good job of it. They think. But I don't think that black people and white people are that far apart. I think we get along with each other pretty well, except in cities where there's nothing but poverty and crime.
Right.
You know, like Chicago and Philly and Detroit and places like that. Those are very unpleasant places to go through. I've been through them. And you can understand why there would be anger and so forth. Why are they angry? Because they're not stupid. If they were stupid, they would just sit there in it and be quiet. But they know something's wrong. Right. And it's a tragedy. And then they demonize somebody like Clive Bundy, who just said, look, they have nothing to look forward to. There's no opportunity. Their little girls are getting pregnant early. Their young men are going to prison early. They give them nothing to do. They just sit there and grind out their lives waiting for the next check, which, by the way, J.P. Morgan Chase gets a slice of. If you don't believe me, you can look it up. They do. So there's big money in poverty. Yeah. It's just, I'll tell you, it just seems to me that if it may, and I've said this a million times too, till people get sick of it, but if this isn't the story of the battle between good and evil, then none of this makes any sense at all, because those who are leaders in positions of power, they are extraordinarily cruel people. They do not care about the citizenry beyond their vote. That's all they care about, or certainly most of them. People like Mr. Reed and Ms. Pelosi, you know, whose husband, I understand, was going to do the paperwork on the Chinese solar farm deal that they wanted out there where Bundy was grazing his cattle. It's just, the corruption is unbelievable. I saw a quote from President Roosevelt, Franklin, not Teddy. And I'm paraphrasing this, but in the broad strokes, it's correct. He was speaking with someone, and he said, well, a few corporations and banks, as you and I both know, are in control and own the country. And it's true. So, you know, when it says in Scripture that money is the love of money is the root of all evil, well, gee, I wonder how they knew that all them years back then. You know what I mean? It's exactly. Oh, Lee, that's an awfully accurate comic book you're reading there, says the atheist. It's like, you know, develop your critical thinking skills beyond where you think they are, because they're not very high. But then again, you know, like Josie Wales said, buzzards got to eat, same as worms. So. Anyway, so.
A couple questions that came in for you, John. Let me throw them by you. Throw them on your desk here. This is good friend Red from the other side of the pond writes in, says, does John think that there's any kind of collusion or underground network of communication between Western media moguls and the Eastern ones, i.e. like China?
Well, we're doing an awful lot of business with them for that not to be a distinct possibility, and probably a high likelihood, you know. Yeah, they have a different way of handling their people. They have a different, the Chinese that is, they have a system that can be quite cruel. It's as cruel as ours, just in a different way.
Right.
We tend to do, the Chinese tend to take care of their own people, meaning like, you know, take care of them, like toss them in the weeds. We seem to do a lot of that to the citizens of other countries. You know, I never thought that I would ever talk like some See, the left has moved over to the right, and the right's moved over to the left.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just one big blur now. But when you think about the anti-war protesters and the ones that were against big government and and against undeclared wars and this and that, well, those were the extreme left-wingers of the 60s. Well, that's the so-called right-wingers doing it now. And the only reason that we don't have protests out there in the streets, anti-war protests, is because there's no draft. If there was a draft, I assure you, we could get together on our politics real quick.
I agree.
You know, but you know, let me finish up one thing because
Sure.
you asked me a question. I really didn't address it. As far as Ebola is concerned, there are a number of possibilities here, including I have a book called Ebola and AIDS, Natural, Accidental, or Deliberate. I don't claim to know these things. It's just that for this many cases to spring up and get this much play, it makes me very suspicious. And, you know, they've got this enterovirus 68, which starts off as, you know, oh, I got a stomach ache, then it turns into fever and chills and all this. And I understand now there's been a number of cases of paralysis and a few fatalities. So what is that? I was speaking with Dr. Richard Allen Miller about chemtrails, and, you know, he's so funny. I just love this guy. He'll kind of laugh like Ed Wynn. He'll kind of do that, hoo, 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 and then he'll look at the camera and he'll get real serious with you. And he's a brilliant guy. And he said that there is a component that's being dispersed. I'm not going to say that he said it was in the chemtrails, but I kind of think that's what he might have said. The details are foggy, but the salient point is that it dehydrates everything. It dehydrates humans, animals, birds, beasts, and plants. And all these people contact me from California all the time talking about, golly, we're just being sprayed all over the place with this. Well, it's possible to spray biotics as well. Now, they're saying that Ebola is not transmissible through the air. But then they kind of crawfish that statement and they say, well, it could be droplet-borne. Oh, so you're saying that if somebody breathed this out into sort of a foggy area and you were standing in it and took a big double lungful, you might actually contract Ebola. Well, yes, it is possible. So it is airborne, provided there's enough water content in it. Well, yes. You have to look for the why. Why would they do this? Why would they lock us down? What are they trying to hide? All these discoveries that are going on in Israel and these various archaeological finds like the ones down in Peru and so forth, and they're finding out that, you know, these elongated skull people, that's not from head binding. The DNA is not human. The geneticist has confirmed it isn't. They're trying to get the samples out of there now. We may just think we know what's going on here. Oh, we're dealing with this and that. This right here could be the grand delusion. The mass annihilation, the mass depopulation, the globalization of everything. Maybe that is the smoke and mirrors part. Maybe what's being concealed is fallen angels, sons of God, many other worlds, rips in time. You know, the Nazis got their Die Glocke, it ripped a little hole in the fabric of time. Oh, and then here they came. You know, they came on in because it was the Germans ripped a hole in the fabric of time and space. It could be something like that, or it could be just base human nature at its worst. You know,
Right.
and it's just up to us individually to decide how we want to view this and deal with it no matter what. And the easiest way to deal with it, in my opinion, is just recognize that one day each of us will pass away. Clearly, we existed before we came into this realm, so therefore it follows that we will exist when our bodies just break down. Your old 427 is just blowed a piston and a head, and the motor's roasted, spun an insert, we're done. And it's possible that we can, I don't know why I use that dialect for color, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's possible when your machine breaks down, okay, that's it. Spirit leaves, goes and gets another one. I don't know. But somebody knows.
Well, and you were talking about the elongated skulls. I believe you've had our friend L.A. Marzulli on your program.
Oh yeah, a couple of times.
Yeah.
Is that guy something, or is he something?
Oh man, I had him here in the studio. Him and his compatriot from Indiana. I'm having a senior moment, John. But I had him here in the studio. They were in Utah, digging around down south, talking to people in rural Utah, and he was moving. He was coming through on a couple of day trip, and I wanted to do an interview. And he said, "Hey, I'll be up there in a month, and let me come in the studio." And we talked till 6:30 in the morning after the show was over. Very interesting individual.
Yes, he is. And his colleague and friend Brian Forster down there that does the Hidden Inca tours. That fellow's on the job too. And between the two of them, they have many revelations to bring forth.
Oh, they do. They do. Want to take a quick call?
Absolutely.
Sure. Welcome to K-Talk. You're on with John B. Wells.
John B. Wells, I'll be damned. He's got his own radio talk show.
Yes, he does.
Wow.
It's true. How you doing?
Not bad, man. I called back, this is my third call.
Gotcha. So,
yeah,
what's on your mind?
You were talking about, exactly. I mean, you're talking about Zachariah Sitchin. And before Sitchin, well, actually around the same time, breaking the God spell, I thought, good God Almighty, of course this is it. This is the conference between
yes. There's nothing more deadly than dead air.
Oh, sorry. Anyway,
that's all right.
Yeah, I was thinking, when I heard him called in. I wasn't prepped, but anyway, yeah, okay. So these guys, they were, it's DNA manipulation, pure and simple.
Yep.
That's the conference between, it came from God, or, it came from, they crawled out of the ocean.
Sure. Well, I think that's probably, it could make a pretty good case for the great flood of Noah's day when the DNA became a little bit too corrupted. It's like, okay, we're good. Build that thing, get on it, because I'm wiping the rest of it out. You got 20 years or whatever it is it took to build that thing. Listen, everything is possible. Everything you can think of is true on some level. And no matter what a person's situation is, however much money they have or they don't have, however good their health is or isn't, the fact is it may not feel like it, but they are part of a really, really big play. And a dramatic presentation on a galactic scale. Bigger
Damn
than
right. And go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, you go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, I'd say you're right, and a lot of people know this thing. I mean, they know the 90% angle on it, but they don't tell us because they're still running for office.
Yep. Well, just be careful who you put in there. Be careful who you trust. Trust should be earned. It doesn't just come with the territory because somebody calls themselves senator or congressman or judge or anything else. Respect is earned. So make sure that people earn your respect. They don't just get it because you're a nice guy.
That's our job.
Yep.
How did he get you on the air?
Well, this is about it for now, brother.
Yeah, I called him and asked him nicely. However, I got to do an NBC News break.
I love him, man. Thanks for having him on.
Oh, we got him for another hour.
This is badass.
All right, man.
Pretty cool. I mean,
be good, brother. All right. Got to take a big media break here. Our guest tonight, John B. Wells. Go check out his website, caravantomidnight.com. Can we keep you for another go-around?
Absolutely.
Okay.